there's no way I can get it all down, so you got to check out his website. I don't know. There's so many penguins on his iceberg. I don't know how he puts them all up there. Grant is a fourth-generation veteran and a Marine F-18 fighter pilot. He has served his country for over a decade on active duty, completing combat tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. He's now He is now a lieutenant colonel in the Marine Reserves. He also served as legislative assistant for Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. He was nominated by Governor Abbott and confirmed at the Texas Senate to serve on the Texas Veterans Land Board. And he has served as Valero's Energy Director of Innovation since 2019. Mark LaHood was scheduled to be here, but he called and said he also has to make a living, and we'll let that slide. He has a big trial tomorrow, already working for us and fighting crime, so we miss him, but understand that he can't be here. So lastly, but certainly not least, our moderator for tonight's event, Ms. Kat Parks. Kat is the immediate past Republican vice chair for Texas. She believes strongly in rugged individualism, the importance of education, and the power of grassroots. She is passionate about creating a cohesive relationships to grow the party by harnessing the talent and conviction of we the people. And we thank you very much for that. So we have, it's so good. We have 4 topics tonight that Kat will lead us in. And without any further ado, I'll turn it over to Ms. Parks.
Thank you. Well, welcome everyone who's able to make it here in person, and then we have quite a few viewers who I know are tuning in at home. So thank you all for joining. Regardless of what colors you wear, what party you identify with, we're here for good conversation. We're here to talk about policy and find out about the issues that affect our communities. I'm going to go ahead and jump us off with the first question, and let's talk about education. So I have quite a few things to share with y'all about things that are happening around the state of Texas. A lot of it's very concerning. Any parents in the audience here? That's right. So think about some of these things that we're going to cover. San Antonio hosted the annual Texas Education Conference, in which a presentation on how to respond to controversies in the classroom was conducted. During this presentation, strategies for responding to complaints about the social studies curriculum, categorized as critical race theory, were taught, and advice about how to explain to parents the lessons being taught are not technically CRT were presented. At this same conference, the American Civil Liberties Union pushed for Texas public schools to allow transgender girls or biological boys into girls' locker rooms, showers, restrooms, and athletics. This isn't just happening in San Antonio. In Austin, Texas, the American School Counselor Association Conference provided presentations for public school counselors on critical race theory and addressing the whiteness culture in school counseling. In Round Rock ISD, School Board Vice President moderated a taxpayer finance book discussion on how to be an anti-racist, in which they focused on collective guilt, where no one is exempt from the work of anti-racism. Fort Worth ISD named Dr. Angela Ramsey, a former superintendent of a California school district near Los Angeles, as the new superintendent. Ramsey has voiced support for equity policies and promoted her research as championing the cause of equity and success with a social justice agenda. And finally, teachers in Leander ISD, just north of Austin, received a training instructing them to discuss gender identity with students, making sure to ask them whether it was okay to share students' preferred pronouns with their parents, warning that some students may have parents who are shaming about a student's identity, and it may not be safe to tell those parents. This is the state of the world today, here in Texas. And so here's my question for each one of you, and please think about this, and love for y'all to respond as you feel. Despite the passage of SB 3, many school districts in Texas are still teaching elements of critical race theory focusing on sexual orientation and gender identity. Our children are our future. And so what can be done to make sure that our schools are focusing on academics and leaving social and emotional education to families, churches, and to communities? Who would like to start us off with this? There's a whole lot to unpackage here.
I don't mind. I don't mind. I guess it's hot. Thank you so much, Lori Lane, for having this, putting this together. Thank you for moderating it. Thank you to all of our veterans. I want to make sure, while that's not an answer to the question, you procured our freedom. I want to say thank you for that. So our world is topsy-turvy right now. We did pass a bill, and it directed SBOE to make sure CRT, critical race theory, was not being taught. I had an amendment to a different bill that had parents have to opt in before any type of sex education was taught. But there have been ways found around this. You know, we've got a lot of great teachers that want to educate and not indoctrinate. And for those teachers, we say thank you so much. But we're going to have, yes. But we're going to have to go back to the drawing board, because every time we pass a bill, the other side finds a way to needle what they want in there. And that is against the intent, and it's hurting our children. So we will go back and look at it again, but the problem is it needs to have teeth, funding, and that's where so much disagreement comes from, because how do you find teeth to enforce that? I personally would like to see the TEA have a division where they have they audit the curriculum. They have an initiative to audit the curriculum of any schools, as well as follow up with parental complaints, and have a unified grievance form or process across the state. So I think with that, we've got to go back in, pass a bill, have some teeth, and do it again.
Thank you, Senator Campbell. Anyone else? Who else wants to chime in? Here, Steve.
I'd be happy to. I agree with Senator Campbell. We need a bill with some teeth. I think we have a pretty good one right now if we can dispel the rhetoric that comes from the other side, and that's purely all it is. I know I spent the last 2 days before we brought the bill back to the House floor in the, I think it was the third special session, and we spent time with Democrats one day, including our chairman of the Education Committee, Harold Dutton, and the commissioner, and the chair of the State Board of Education, to make sure that we had everything addressed, make sure that we'd get buy-in from the Democrats, and could move forward. And I think we crafted a very good bill that is very specific, nothing like what the Democrats are, how they're portraying it. I think it's clear that we want history taught, but we don't want it spun with one race against another, one sex against another, anything of that nature. And I think that bill's very clear. But if we need to go back and tweak it, improve it, I think we're in a good position to do that. You know, as a former school board member, I think this is a local control issue. And talking about putting teeth in something, I think we need to get teeth in our local school boards. They're in the best position, I believe, to judge what community standards are. And I think that's what this issue is all about, is community standards. And the school board needs to enforce the law. I think we've got things in place, and they need to enforce it.
Thank you, Representative. Jump in.
Yeah. So I was K through law school, public school educated. My wife was K through law school, public school educated. Many of you know I went to the University of Virginia, founded by Jefferson, very specifically for the purpose of the public diffusion of knowledge. It was an important aspect of our republic and the foundational principles being built on an educated populace in a republic, requiring an informed citizenry. It's critically important that we have that. But you're not going to fix the government-run schools with legislation in Washington or in the legislature. You're going to fix those schools by parental empowerment. And that's it. That's the only way that we're going to fix them. Because, that's right. The legislature was right to pass a ban on critical race theory, and I applaud it. But it's obvious that the schools are going to end run it. Right here, Northside ISD, right? They're dividing kids up by hair color. I sent a letter to the school, they basically just dismissed it, just ignored it, right? They literally split kids up by hair color and said, certain kids, you're going to be able to stay here, or you're going to be able to go to recess or lunch, and certain kids are going to have to stay here and clean up the room. And they did this without parental consent. And this kind of stuff is happening every single day in every school throughout the state. No school is free from it. There is no banning and uprooting something that is entirely intertwined with the entire curriculum built upon now at least 2 generations, if not longer, of complete indoctrination by our universities. That's what's happening. So if we want to fix that quickly, the only way is full empowerment of parents with the hammer of being able to take their children out and put them in a school of their choice. Yes, sir. And there could be nothing more important for our state than this state passing choice this legislative session. And I say that, and I say border, crime, property taxes, there's a lot, energy grid. But our schools, they've got to be saved from the grips of unions, and they've got to be given back to the parents. And so because parents have reasons beyond just the failure of the education system in terms of what they're learning. They want their kids to be able to pray in school. They want their kids to be able to believe that there's a God. They want their kids to be able to believe that this country is great and not be told to apologize for their country. And they should be able to have that choice without being beholden to the property taxes they're paying for a school system that they don't feel like they can use for their kids. At the federal level, I've got a bunch of my colleagues that are running on, a parental bill of rights from Washington. Well, nothing sounds better to me than Washington coming up with what they think the parental bill of rights ought to be and running through Congress and telling us what that ought to be. Personally, I think we ought to block grant the dollars back to the states and get Washington out of the way and give those block grants back to the states. Yeah.
So, and I was going to add to Chip, and I 100% agree with what's been said. I have a blended family of 8 kids, right? And 6 of them are in public school. I'm personally fighting a critical race issue going on right now in one of the schools, middle school here in San Antonio. So if you think that it is not happening in your neighborhood, it is. That's number one, and I 100% agree. We do need to disband the Department of Education immediately. That's how you stop it. You stop the funding. And just the other day, I was thinking to myself, I don't remember going to elementary, middle school, or high school knowing the political affiliation or sexual orientation of any of my teachers. And if any kid knows that at all, you're past educated, you are now an indoctrinator. And you're brainwashing our children. So I don't care what you think you're doing as an educator. If you think you're the best educator and you want to dive into that realm, you have now gone into the indoctrination level, and you need to be fought against at every level, and parents need to get involved.
And Kat, if I could, I want to add on top of what Kyle just said. The vice president just this morning, I think, maybe yesterday, said, quote, "When you see our kids, and I truly believe that they are our children, they are the children of our country, of our communities." And then she went on to say a bunch of other stuff. I'm telling you, that's the mindset. They believe that they belong to them. They don't. They belong to us.
That's right. What do we think? The audience is on board with this. It's time for parents to wake up, take back our schools, and for all of us to stand up and get involved. Thank you all for your thoughts on that.
Listen, the county judge obviously does not have a lot of control over this issue. I mean, we manage a $2.8 billion budget. I've said it one time 7,000 times. You are the CEO of the county. You're the chief executive officer managing a $2.8 billion budget. And so we don't weigh into education. I will tell you, as a result of my background, I passed a lot of school bond elections. Over at SAISD for a number of different years. And so as we passed those bond elections, they were about the basic building blocks of education, which is what? Better teachers to teach our kids. It's about the basics of making sure that we tell our kids and teach our kids. And I'm not somebody who's going to be about teaching to the test. That's a totally different topic, but we shouldn't be teaching to the test either. Because it limits the brain capacity of our children. And so as we look at how we prepare them for college, what is it? It is about the basics at the end of the day. It is about the basics of reading and writing, and I know it's right to say that, and arithmetic. But those are the things that you expect out of public schools. And Congressman Roy, you're absolutely right. Thomas Jefferson, one of the founders of this country, the best thing he ever did was talk about and create
concept of public education and what that means. Because it is still the largest vehicle by which we educate children in this country. So it has to be supported. But we've got to make sure, like I said, we are preparing our children to compete against China, against others who want to take over our country. It is about, like I said, those basic building blocks associated with what is so important and preparing our children for college. Because it's not about, and look, I have very high expectations as a county commissioner, obviously, held a lot of people accountable and made them very uncomfortable, but it's the same conversation that I have with my children. I have a daughter who's a senior in high school who's exploring college. She's got accepted to a different school yesterday. Super exciting time for our family when they get ready to spread their wings and go to college. But we want to make sure that they are prepared. And so when we talk about what are we doing in schools or whatever, it is about the basic building blocks of education.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you, Trish. Hold on, Grant. I'm not gonna ignore you, but have y'all ever been asked to herd cats? It's about the same thing as moderating a bunch of people who are running for office and serving in that capacity. And I'm going to keep things moving here. We're going to shift to the next question, which has to do with a pivotal and very important topic, and that is the border. So the situation at the border, it's become unsustainable. While we all feel compassion for those seeking a better life, allowing over 2 million illegal immigrants this year alone has created conditions for human and illicit drug trafficking, as well as a public safety nightmare for border towns. We've been reminded that when the border is wide open the way that it is right now, what it does more than anything is empower the most violent and powerful and dangerous criminal organizations on the face of the planet. I'll give you a few examples. According to the New York Post, the Drug Enforcement Administration seized enough fentanyl last year to kill every American. 2,100 pounds in July alone from the U.S. Customs and Border Protection information. I'm a former ER nurse in a past life. I've seen those overdose deaths. I've been in the room with the family when the doctors news. This is a true... There we go. I know Senator/Dr. Campbell, I know you've probably had similar experiences as well. Then just last June in San Antonio, 53 immigrants suffocated to death in a sweltering 18-wheeler cloned to look like a legally registered truck as they were smuggled into the country. These are tragedies, and there is a cost to these open borders. Not only that, but of course landowners on the border are having to fight illegal crossings of their own. Their property values are dropping, and open borders, migrant centers in San Antonio make it an everyday concern for everyone. So the question is, given the critical threat and the danger that illegal immigration is posing to our communities and state, what are your specific detailed plans to mitigate it? How do we deal with these things? How do we deal with real tragedy and a problem that's creating issues of compassion?
Well,
Yes,
you want me to start?
please.
There is a crisis on our border. The Supremacy Clause provides that the federal government has complete power to enforce, or the sole power to enforce immigration. So that really stops us a lot. But in the Senate and the House, we have funded border support by $4 billion. That's just in these 2 years. With air, land, water resources, technology. We've had surges. They've raided stash houses. We've got Operation Lone Star, Operation Drawbridge. We've got DPS, Texas Military Department with the National Guard, which, by the way, Biden could call up and take them off our border at any time, right? And then the Texas Parks and Wildlife. But America is a magnet. We're a magnet to bring people here. So we need to, and with the policies that Biden has, we need to stop the draw, build a wall, keep the migrants in Mexico, and keep Biden out of D.C.
Please, Grant.
Just on tactically speaking, do you know who represents you on the State Board of Education? Do you know who your school board members are? Because if you don't, you need to. I recruited 2 State Board of Education candidates this past cycle. One is going to be on the State Board of Education going forward. There's only 15 members that sit on that board who determine all the curriculum for the state of Texas. 5 million kids. Be involved in those races. Thank you.
Here's the reality with the border is, number one, there's 2 different topics between border security and immigration reform. I don't care what party affiliation you are, you should want our country secure. Now, immigration reform is a whole different subject. How you go about it, what you want to do with it, that can be a bipartisan or partisan, you can debate back and forth. But every American should want our country secure, period. We have epidemic levels of sex trafficking, human trafficking, and drug trafficking in this country like we have never seen. The deadliest human smuggling instance was in District 20 that I'm running in against my opponent, who has said absolutely nothing about the cartel. The last thing I will say is that the President of the United States is not going to do his job under the Constitution. The governors must act, and I support Governor Abbott busing.
So I'm going to go for the Congressman because I heard him at lunch last week, so I know he can go on and on about this issue. But let me just say, look, we have an administration that created this issue at the border. The crisis that we have, the humanitarian crisis that we have at the border. By the way, it is an administration who has not come down to the border in South Texas to see what is being done. That's not, it's unconscionable where I'm concerned. So we do, look, I have been talking to those that are at the Migrant Center here in San Antonio, many of those from Venezuela, and there is no question, everybody who's on this panel, our hearts go out to them because why? They're being threatened, they're being oppressed, their families are being killed every single day. There's a reason why they want to come to the greatest country in the world, because we are the land of opportunity.
There's no question, but there have to be controls in place. Because as I've done something called Time with Trish, I'm a small business owner, obviously you all know that, and I have worked alongside folks that have immigrated to this country legally, whether it's been in a hot kitchen, someone works at Toyota 5 days a week and then works at Las Palapas on the weekend and doesn't understand, by the way, why people don't want to go to work. She doesn't get it. She also doesn't understand why she came through legally and others do not. And this is somebody who, like I said, came from Mexico, who came into this country legally. So there has to be a process. The last great attempt we had at that was in the 1990s, and I studied this bill very extensively as somebody who's worked in public policy for a number of different years. It was the McCain-Kennedy bill. It was John McCain and it was Ted Kennedy. And it was about, let's be clear here, folks, people that come to this country are hardworking and want to make a living for themselves and want to contribute to this economy. And they want to learn about the United States and they want to work hard. And they're proud when they get their, and they're proud when they have their citizenship and stand up and say, I am an American citizen. So it is not about opening up all the borders and let anybody and everybody across the border, because guess who's in control when that happens? The drug cartels. The same people who have oppressed the people that are trying to come across here. The same people who are being fentanyl across this border in record amounts, which, by the way, I just talked to my son who's at the University of Texas, who will be is a junior right now, and I tell him, son, please be careful what the crowd that you're hanging with, what you're looking at, what you might be drinking, whatever, because we all know college is supposed to be a fun, fun time. But as the congressman will tell you, he had 4 high schoolers who were killed in a fentanyl overdose. You had a Longhorn football player that was killed with a fentanyl overdose. This is a problem. It is a threat to not just the democracy of the United States of America, but also to our children and to those who want to poison our country. So, what do we have to do? It is, at the end of the day, about comprehensive immigration reform. It is about working across both sides of the aisle so that we do have a process, a path to citizenship for those that really want to work hard here, a circulatory process by which those who come to this country and then want to send money back to their families, there's a way to be able to do that, and work visas to be able to get there. But it's going to take a lot of time and energy and effort. But we have an administration right now that doesn't care.
That's right. That's right.
So, thank you.
Let me just add, I support what the governor's doing 100%. When he issued his executive order declaring the cartels a terrorist organization, I think that's the right direction we need to go. And what is inescapable is and we just can't overemphasize it enough, is the impact of fentanyl. It is a killer, and it's killing our children. And as we look at Halloween coming up, you know, they're starting to lace it in candy to make it look like candy. And it is so lethal, it takes just a grain or two to kill you. And I know that there was a report within the last couple of weeks, a teacher was able to intercept and prevent a student from taking the fentanyl, but just by touching it, she died. It is that lethal, and it is impacting our country and our children so severely. We've got to do everything within our power to stop it, if for no other reason, to stop the fentanyl and next to human trafficking that's coming across. And, you know, I heard an interview with and I forget the title of the official in Arizona. And they are revisiting, attaching the large storage units and stacking them across the border to develop a wall. We need to do anything within our power, since the federal government won't do anything to meet their obligations, to stop the trafficking that's coming across. And if we can force everyone to do it the right way, you know, all of us, I think we're sympathetic to the humanitarian nature of what's happening. All of our relatives were immigrants, but they did it the right way. So if we can force everybody back to the entry points or back to the embassies like it should be, we need to do that.
A lot has been said, and I don't want to repeat it. Look, 3.5 million apprehensions. 1 to 2 million of them have been released into the United States. 1 million gotaways. 72,000 people died last year from fentanyl. That's more than the entirety of American casualties during the Vietnam War. I had 4 die in Hays County. That's not talking about the 8 who were saved from Narcan. Like, it is a massive problem. It is real. It's in your schools. It's in your communities. You are in danger. Your communities are in danger because of open borders. Those are the facts. Cartels, Culpeper, Virginia, an hour west of Washington, D.C. The sheriff there just busted a 40 to 45 person cartel gathering in Culpeper, Virginia. There's a headline in Baltimore just 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, busting a cartel operation in Baltimore. It is reaching up from Mexico into the United States. It's all real. It's not even really debatable. Those are the issues. We know that. We know what we need to do. You need to secure the border by building infrastructure, building a wall. You need to have policies that you can enforce. You need to empower ICE to actually enforce the law, and you need to knock the knees out from under the cartels. That's what we need to do. This administration is choosing very specifically to ignore the laws of the United States, the actual black letter laws of the United States, using asylum as a fake excuse to ignore the laws to allow a flood of people to come to our border. 88 people who are on terrorist watch lists or affiliated with terrorist organizations. This is a real situation that can be avoided, but you're only going to fix it 2 ways. One, I mean, all those things I'll talk about, building infrastructure, that's all fine. None of that's going to do it right away. You have to change the policy of the United States to turn people away who do not have a legal ability to be here and have a full adjudication of a claim, period. That has to be the way we do it. And number 2, if the feds don't do that, and right now they're not, unless we force them through the power of the purse to do it, which is my position. I need it to be the majority position of the Republican Party and have Republicans do it. But we have to use the power of the purse to force the policy change. If they won't, the governor is absolutely right to be doing everything in his power, supported and backed by the legislature, to do what we can to stop the flow. I do believe it's an invasion, and I do believe Texas should have to consider those options if the feds flat out refuse to do what they're required to do under the Constitution of the United States.
Thank you. Let's move on to a new topic. Lawlessness and public safety. According to the most recent data from the FBI, the total crime rate in San Antonio is 62% higher than the rest of the state of Texas. It's 86% higher than the national crime rate. San Antonio PD shared its crime report from 2021 earlier this year, and it listed 160 homicides, the most in the city since 1994. According to San Antonio Police Chief William McManus, at least 85 of the 160 have not been solved. In recent years, we see DAs going rogue, randomly deciding which cases to prosecute. Additionally, the recent actions of the Bexar County Sheriff prove to citizens that he's more interested in what Ron DeSantis is doing and the travel conditions of illegal immigrants than he is in the safety of Bexar County citizens. What can we do to establish, enforce, and protect the rule of law and allow our citizens to live without fear?
In the Senate, first we need to defend our police and not defund them, right? We are a nation of laws. In the Senate, we passed a bill that if a city defunds the police, then there's a mechanism in there for our comptroller to go in and not give them some of their tax revenue that comes from the state. And he's challenged the county judge in Harris County when she was trying some shenanigans. So we've got that bill out there. I passed a bill that says it's against the law to block emergency vehicles when they need to get by. We have to pass the laws. We have to support our police, all of our law enforcement. We've got to elect district attorneys that will prosecute. And let me tell you, before you pull the trigger to use your Second Amendment rights, you'd better make sure you live in a county where you have a good DA that's not going to make you the criminal and the person who was assaulting you the victim, right? So we've got to do that. We've got to show our police and law enforcement support.
Thank you, Senator.
Yeah, amen to that, Donna. Listen, as a county judge, I mean, certainly there is a certain amount of purview you have over this, and I have heard it. If I haven't heard it once, I've heard it 1,000 times. As I have moved across this county, and believe me, it is a big county. It's a big urban county. So whether it's the Thompson Neighborhood Association on the west side, whether it's Dignity Hill and Denver Heights on the east side, whether it's Harmony Hills on the north side, or whether it's Highland Park and Highland Hills on the south side. What is the common denominator and the common thread when I have those conversations and I sit in on neighborhood associations? Crime. Supporting law enforcement. We don't have enough community policing. There are not enough officers on the street. And by the way, what seems to the current DA to be a minor crime, to you all sitting here, if your car is broken into or your house is broken into, it's a major personal offense and crime, right? And so I think we've lost our way a little bit, or more than a little bit, when it comes to what I hear people saying in the community is if you do the crime, you do the time, right? So to your point, Donna, yeah, I'll wrap this up. We do. We have to make sure that we have a DA in place. And look, I get it. Life is all about second chances, right? Because there are amazing stories of people who have had second chances, but you don't get third, fourth, and fifth chances either. And if you're a felon and you're incarcerated in the prison for a murder or what have you, you should not be let back out onto the street. And so, like I said, I'm all about second chances. I have people in my family that have lived great lives associated with second chances. But it also means, just like I've said, we hold our children accountable for the decisions that they make. And sometimes, guess what, folks? As human beings, we make bad decisions. But at the end of the day, and I'll let Grant take over here, there have to be repercussions associated with those bad decisions. Because if not, guess what happens? You continue to make bad decisions. So it's about leadership and it's about holding people accountable. That is what I will bring to the office of Bexar County Judge. Thank you.
Priority
here's what Grant and I are going to do. And having been a county commissioner and what I have seen in a $2.8 billion budget, we have not prioritized public safety. So with Grant and I on there together, we will make a commitment to you tonight. Public safety will be prioritized and you will be kept safe.
Quick.
We'll see who's up. Okay. So what I would add is 2021 was the deadliest homicide year in San Antonio for 27 years. I just talked to a veteran homicide detective this past Saturday. We are 30% above that number from last year. We are going to set a horrible record again in this county. What I want to know is any elected official who supported in San Antonio of defunding our police. If you're an elected official, your number one priority should be the safety of the community that you are called to represent. If you decided to support defunding in our police, we should know exactly who you are, and you should not be holding that position. And that starts from the federal level, which will bring resources to the county and to the commissioner and to that. And that's what you get when you have somebody like me running in District 20, somebody who will support, who's been endorsed by the Police Association, and who will fight for you, for your safety in the community of San Antonio.
Thank you. Thank you.
It doesn't stop at defunding the police. If you don't adequately fund, it's not much different. For example, here in Bexar County, we have 400,000 people living in the unincorporated areas. 400,000. The recommended ratio is 2.3 officers per thousand. You know what it is here? 0.8. 0.8. And that's why there's so much crime and so much unrest and so much concern for security in the county areas. And we need to do something about that. Because if the county or the city or anyone doesn't step up and adequately provide for public safety, they haven't fulfilled their obligation. They haven't provided the public safety, and I don't think that's any different than defunding the police if you don't adequately fund. We've tried to work with them. I'm prepared to work with the Deputy Sheriff's Association. I understand local control. I'm a staunch advocate for local control, but it's out the window when you come to public safety. So I'm prepared to work with the Deputy Sheriff's Association around the state to pass legislation next session to require adequate staffing and adequate funding to more secure.
Thank you, Representative. I'm going to move quickly to our last topic of the evening, and this is a very important topic about increasing voter turnout. So since the 2020 election, there are a lot of voters who are concerned. Maybe some of you in this room. According to a Rasmussen Report survey from March of this year, 52% of voters, including 34% of Democrats, believe that cheating affected the outcome of the 2020 U.S. presidential election. Here's the concern. As a result of the 2020 elections, many conservative voters are choosing to stay home on Election Day. We cannot afford to lose votes in Bexar County. So how will you, and I'm giving you all, this is the quick draw, you each have less than 60 seconds for your answer, okay? How will you ensure a message of honest, fair, and secure elections so that voters are willing to come out and turn out and vote and know that their votes will be counted? All right, who wants to start us off? Let's start here and work our way that way.
2 weeks away.
That's right.
So making sure that your network, your friends, your family know what they're going to do, how they plan to vote, how they plan to get to the polls. I think all those things are critical, making sure that we get out there and vote. Because, we lose Texas. If we lose Texas, we lose our country. And very and so we got.
Thank you, Grant.
I think, Kat said something that I think is very insightful, and that is the last thing that we need is for people to stay home because they don't feel like their vote is secure. And so, the elections office obviously comes under the purview of the county. I've been grateful, actually, for the work of Jeff McManus, who heads up the Republican Party of Bexar County, and others, who have worked very closely, obviously, with Jackie Callanan, who I think is a great lady, who has done the best job that she knows how to keep our election secure. And so she's taken some steps to make sure, and some extra steps at the behest of folks who have asked some very tough questions about the elections office to make sure that we are really locking things up when it comes to making sure, like I said, that people feel like when they vote that there is a process by which has integrity associated with it. And I use that word, and I want to stress that. Integrity associated with voting is critically important to making sure that we bring people out so that they feel like their vote is secure. And so as we look, one of the biggest things that I will do as your next Bexar County judge is we may have a new elections administrator that comes into that office. And so, look, that's no disrespect to Jackie Callanan. I mean, she's done the best job that she knows how to be able to do there under extreme circumstances. But when we look at retirement and what happens, obviously, I would not be running for this seat if I wasn't running for a seat that was occupied by somebody who was there for 20 years. Jackie's been in that seat for a very long time. So I'm just saying, it just means there may be an opportunity, obviously, that we have to really dig in, both sides, whether you're Democrat, Republican, moderate, independent, to make sure that we have a hell of an elections administrator who is in that office. And so, anyway, it's a process that will come up when Grant's in office, when I'm there too. And so we're going to do the hard work, and we're going to do the heavy lifting to make sure that elections are secure.
Thank you. Thank you.
I felt that one of our charges at the last legislative session was to address the election code and restore election integrity, and more importantly, perhaps, is restore confidence in our election process. And I believe, despite the rhetoric you've heard, and we all still suffer through, I think we have a good bill. I think we have a good act that the governor signed, and I fully agree with the oft-used phrase, we want to make it easy to vote and hard to cheat. And I think we did that. And I think we accomplished it in a fair way that is going to restore that confidence in our election process. We specified what constitutes election fraud or an election violation, so it's known going in what's going to happen and what the penalties are. And I think that's important. Also, we've got to make sure that any violations of the election code and our voting is prosecuted. And if a local DA doesn't like the law, that's not his or her discretion. And if we need to invoke, the governor has powers in certain situations to replace the DA. If we need to tweak existing legislation, there's been some controversial decisions by the Court of Criminal Appeals that says the Attorney General cannot prosecute voting fraud cases. Well, if we need to change that, I think it's going to be an easy fix that if the local DA fails or refuses to perform his or her duties and prosecute, the Attorney General can step in and do so.
Well, I agree 100% with Representative Allison. We passed the election integrity bill, made it hopefully easier to vote, harder to cheat. They took away Attorney General, Fourth Court of Criminal Appeal took away the Attorney General's ability to prosecute for election fraud. So we've got some challenges before us. But let me tell you, there are more of us than them. We just have to get us out to the polls. But sometimes Republicans eat their own. So you've got to get people out. Nehemiah built a wall around Jerusalem in record time because he had, back to Grant's point about working your social network, because Nehemiah had this family build the wall right here, which joined the family next to him, which joined the family next to him. They built the wall around their city in record time because they all worked together, a weapon in one hand and brick and mortar in the other. This is a spiritual battle. So our biggest weapon that we have is worship, because a nation is not judged on their strength by their weaponry. It is their worship. So pray, get people to the polls, vote all the way down, get a good DA in there, get all good judges, and let's win and have victory in November.
Predominantly a state and local issue. A year and a half ago, I testified for the legislature. These guys did the hard work, took Texas, which is better than a lot of states, made it better. Probably some more can continue to work on in the next legislative session to keep making it better. At the federal level, the Constitution specifies that Congress can affect congressional elections and the presidential electors. It is my belief that we should have election on one single day, one federal holiday in November, and I think if we do that, that would help right the ship a lot, and we ought to limit mail-in ballots to true absentee ballots, specifically because fraud is in mail-in ballots. That's where the fraud exists. That's how you fix it.
I would end with, when I'm in Congress, I would support Chip Roy's bill. But here's what I will say. We fight wars literally over democracy and the ability to vote. We spent 20 years in Afghanistan trying to build a democracy so they could vote. We've got to shore up our vote. I'll tell you what I did. I worked with the state, I worked with the Bexar County Election Integrity, and we created and got certified poll watchers for District 20. I will not be cheated out of an election. And I think that's the level we've got to get. We've got to continue to fight back. We know corruption is there from the national level through the state level all the way down to the city level. And then to Senator Campbell's comment as well, vote down ballot. We had people in our election that had 30 to 40,000 undervotes. That means Republicans went in to vote, but they didn't vote down ballot. And that is another reason why we get wiped out every single election by the Democrats. So my message to everybody is to get out, poll watch if you're not going to do anything else for a campaign. The other message is to continue to vote down ballot, to bring your friends, and to continue to support our democracy, because your vote counts.
Thank you, Kyle.
Together we can keep Texas strong. We need to do that because there's not another Texas to move to.
Join me. Y'all, thank you for coming out tonight. Brandy Jo, Laura Lane, all of you who helped put this together. We are so lucky to have such great candidates. Brandy Jo, do you need the microphone here? Thank you all. Really appreciate it.
Did you really think there was going to be a night where I didn't get a microphone? Exactly. Thank you, Kat. Beautiful job. Now, I would like to throw a little curveball at y'all. And Donna, Senator Campbell, I know that you need to leave. If you would like to hang around and do some Q&A. If you can. If not, I'm giving you the option to save lives. I'm giving you the option to save lives right now.
I do have to leave, but this has been very enjoyable, and it's a great opportunity for us to get to talk. Thank you.
All right, so There are some people in the crowd that have shared their opinions with me. I see that they've left from right behind me. That's so sad because they were giving me such shit. Yes, they were giving me such bullshit about this being a Fox News thing. So now we're going to have a nice little Q&A. And so, does anyone have any questions for Trista Berry, Grant Moody, Steve Allison, Chip Roy? Yes, sir. Right there. Hold on. I'm going to bring you a microphone.
What? My name is Avery Murrah, and I'd like to know why Governor Abbott can't crush the cartel. If the federal government is not going to do it, why can't he empower the forces of Texas to do it?
Who'd like to take that? I do know for a fact that the question is, why can't Greg Abbott crush the cartel? Now, from my opinion and in my interaction with the governor's office and the attorney general's office, is that they have done everything they can up to this point because we are the United States of America. We are not the United Texas that we kind of want to be. So can we talk about what we need to do? And I think, Congressman Roy, I think you have some insight on that.
Just getting to the heart of the question, right? As I said before, the feds aren't doing their job. We all know that, right? I think, number one, before I answer your question, our responsibility in Washington as Republicans is to use the power of the purse. Federalist 58, Madison wrote, it's the most effective tool we have to check an executive branch that's out of control. We should use that and demand change. But if that doesn't happen, or if we're not able to force the change, or even if we're only able to force modest change, then I do believe that when you have an invasion, which I believe this is, I believe it's just a textual definition of invasion, cartels, fentanyl are killing Americans, ranches overrun, we've got dangerous criminals, terrorists coming to the United States, then we can act. It is a big question. It is a big leap, okay? And you have to account for the fact that right now in Austin, Texas, there are 19 police officers who are being sued by radical leftists for civil rights violations. The day that law enforcement, DPS or other law enforcement in Texas, are turning away people at the Rio Grande instead of CBP, instead of Border Patrol, there will be immediate lawsuits, immediate action in court, and they will target those law enforcement officers. So we have to do it wisely. The AG's office has to be prepared, but I believe we ought to take that step if the feds refuse to secure the border. It's an existential threat. We're endangered, and we should act to do it. That's my belief.
Thank you, Congressman. Now, I know that this lady right here, Charlotte Blakely, she has a question. Let's stand up, Charlotte. Your question is about election integrity.
Okay, so I'm not over 2020. I have a problem with it. We wouldn't be dealing with all of this if we hadn't stood up to what happened in 2020. I sat there and I watched Fox News when they called Arizona way back at, 10% of the vote in. And I haven't been able to sleep since, and that's figurative, but I think that's what split us up as Republicans. I think we've got to get the vote out, but I know there are people out there that can't get over 2020 and won't vote. It isn't me. But I don't know how we get those people to vote. We've got to get them to vote. We've got to come together, and we've got to really seriously deal with the election issues that we're having. And it's a problem that I understand. I mean, if we didn't solve the problem of 2020, how can we be sure that 2022 is secure? That's the question.
How do we know that our vote is secure?
My immediate answer is you replace the DA immediately, and we're working on that as a party. We're working on that across the country. George Soros has impacted that nationally and knew what was going on. So that's a significant impact, is get the DA Mark LaHood in so that we can prosecute and go after fraud or election integrity that are under question. But it's continuing to get poll watchers to get out there to make sure that we are watching what is going on, inspecting, and transparency. Look, I want transparency for both parties. I want them to have a fair and free election just as much as I want the Republican Party to. We all deserve that as Americans, to trust our election and to know that it's done right and that we can see it very clearly. So that's my answer. Number one is we've got to fix it, especially in the state of Texas under the Texas Constitution, is the DA. You've got to fix our DA problem.
Anyone else?
I think we sort of already answered that question that was asked before about we have new controls that are in place, thanks to, I think, Jackie Callanan being open and transparent and having people walk through the elections office, which, by the way, like I said, I think she's done a yeoman's job, but I also think she's been very open to making sure that she changes things so that people feel more comfortable about the vote. Jeff McManus has been one that stepped up and said, hey, I think Jackie's doing a good job. And so it is about making sure that we have controls in place to make people feel more secure. But I am on point with Congressman Roy. The security issue that we have regarding voting is really in ballot by mail and what that looks like. And quite honestly, targeting of seniors. I mean, we saw it. Ballot harvesting and talking seniors into voting a certain way, and those that can't speak up for themselves. We have to guard against that every single day. But a lot of that comes with education, it comes with outreach, it comes with advocacy and making sure that, like I said, that people feel confident that their vote counts and there is integrity in the process. And so, like I said, a shout out to Jackie Callanan and what she's done in the elections office and how she stepped up to make sure that we are providing resources and controls that give people confidence that their vote is secure.
All right, thank you so much. I just want to shout out to everyone that has made this possible tonight. Salo Rodriguez, right there. S180 Productions. Laura Lane, come here, Laura Lane. Everyone, can you stand up? Stand up for me. Let's all stand up. Laura Lane, my ride or die. Here we go. Trish, Grant, Congressman Chip Roy, Kyle Sinclair, future Congressman, State Rep Steve Allison. I want to thank you all. We work for you. Laura and I started this PAC to bring this kind of production to you so you could share in the interaction with these people, because these people work for us. Amen? Amen. And we want to make you closer to them. So we all thank you for coming, and we all thank you for being here, and we all thank you for viewing. Thank you so much for being here.